Alright, today we're going to do the review worksheet, 3.5, 3.6. It's probably going to take more than one video, so we'll start with part 1. It's going to start with number 1 and see how far we can get. For the first 12 problems, we're going to need to know graphing shortcuts, so that's numbers 1 through 12. Remember, step 1 is you're going to have to find h and k. H is whoever's hanging out with your x inside the radical, and we don't trust the h hanging out with our x, so we always change the sign. And then k is always after the radical. Remember, it might be beneficial to find a as well, because a is whatever's in front of the radical. And a lot of times when there is no h or k, you guys get confused and think a is h or k, and it's not. Okay? And then, if it's a square root, you use a starting point. And that's where h and k is in the starting point. You add 1 to h, you add 4 to h, you add 9 to h, because those are perfect squares, because it's a square root. And then that will make it so your XY chart's pretty nice. Now, if it's a cube root, it has a little 3 there. That tells us it's a cube root. That means you're going to make it a middle point. All right? That means h and k is a middle point. It's the middle of your XY chart, and you subtract perfect cubes. So you subtract 1, subtract 8, add 1, add 8. And remember, domain and range are based on whether it's a starting point or a middle point. If it's a starting point, you have to deal with h and k for your domain and your range. And if it's a middle point, then all the domain and range is exactly the same. Okay? And that's it for the shortcuts. Alright, step 1 for number 1 is find h and k. So h is 0 because there's nothing inside the radical. And k is 0 because there's nothing after the radical. So that's my h, that's my k. It's a starting point because it's a square root. So I put 0, 0 to start. I do h plus 1 to get 1, h plus 4 to get 4, h plus 9 to get 9. Now, remember, you can use a as a little shortcut so you don't have to plug in your calculator. So I can do 0 plus negative 4 to get negative 4. Negative 4 plus negative 4 gives me negative 8. Negative 8 plus 4 is negative 12. All right? So then I have 0, 0. I have 1. I go down to 4. I go over 4 down to negative 8. And then 9 is like down to 12, so it's not going to fit on the graph. If you didn't fit it on, that's okay. So there's my graph. Notice, nothing got past my starting point. Some people make a bad habit of going through the starting point. You can't do that. Domain is all the reals such that x, and since it's going to the right, the graph's going to the right, means it's greater than, all right, greater than whatever h is, which is 0. Now the range, all the reals, such that y, you can use a comma if you don't want to use that bar. Since it's going down, it's y is less than k, so I have y is less than or equal to 0. And that's it. Alright, number 2, same exact concept. First thing I'm going to do is find h and k. It's 0, 0. I make my xy chart. Once again, it's a starting point because it's negative 4/5 times the square root of 0. Like I said, it might be helpful to tell you right away negative 4/5 is a, so that you don't get confused and think negative 4/5 is h or k. So, 0, 0 is my starting point. 1, 4, and 9 is my x. And then I'm going to use a to build my y chart. So I do 0 plus a, which gives me negative 4/5. You might want to put decimal if you do better with decimals. So negative 0.8. I do that plus a to get my next level. That gives me negative 8/5 or negative 1.6. I add a again to get my next level, and that's negative 12/5 or negative 2.4. All right. So it doesn't matter whether you use decimals or whole numbers or fractions. I'm going to change my scale. I'm going to go by halves. So that's 1. That's 2. That's 3. I only changed the y. You don't have to change both. So I only changed y. So I have 0, 0. And remember, if you change the top portion, you got to change the bottom portion of negative 1. and then negative 2, and then negative 3. So 0, 0, then I go 1, negative 4/5. So I go over 1, negative 0.8's pretty close to 1, but it's below it. It's not quite to it yet. So I go over 4, go down negative 1.6, there's 1.5. So I just go really close to 1.5, but a little bit below it. And then I go over 9, and I go down to negative 12/5, which is negative 2.4, which is really close to that. And there we go. Once again, I do domain, all the reals, such that x is greater than or equal to 0, because it goes to the right. Range, all the reals, such that y is less than or equal to 0, because it goes down. All right, and that's it. Another way to say that it's less than or equal to 0 is because of that negative out there. Another way to say that it's greater than or equal to 0 is because that's positive. Okay? And that's it for 2. Alright, so I'm going to pick it up a little bit for this one. H and K is 0, 0. If you didn't know, A is 5. So I make my XY chart. 0, 1, 4, and 9. 0, 0, because that's K. I add A, I get 5. I add A again, I get 10. I add A again, I get 15. I'm going to change my scale. I'm going to make this 5. I'm going to make this 10. I'm going to make this 15. Alright? So then I'm going to go 0, 0, 1, 5, go over 4, up to 10, go over 9, up to 15. And then, there we go. Domain, all the reals, such that x is greater than or equal to 0. I could have said that was without doing any looking at the graph. I could have said that's positive, that's why it's greater than, or I can see that it's going to the right. Range, all the reals, such that y is greater than or equal to 0. That's positive, that's another way to know it's greater than or equal to, or I can see that the graph is going up. Alright, so that's it for 8. I mean 3, I don't know why I said 8. That's it. Alright, number 4, it's y is equal to 2 cube root of x. So everything's pretty much the same to start. I find h and k, it's still 0, 0, because there's nobody in jail with your x. There's nobody after the jail, after the radical. And like I said, it might be helpful for you to find a. So a is 2. That's going to help you so you don't get confused that that 2 is neither h nor k. Okay? Now remember, because it's a cube root, so cube root means you have a middle point. So when I make my xy chart, I put 0, 0 in the middle. And then I subtract 1, that's why I get minus 1. I subtract 8, that's why I get minus 8. I do 0 minus 1, or 0 plus 1 to get plus 1, 0 plus 8 to get positive 8. Now, since a is 2, I'm going to add 2. I'm going to do plus a to get that one. So 0 plus 2 is 2. I'm going to add a to get the next one. That's how I get 4. Now, if I go this way, I have to subtract a. So if I subtract a, I can go up. So 0 minus 2 is minus 2. Minus 2 minus a is minus 4. So that's how I do that without using the calculator. If you want to use the calculator, you can totally do that. That's an option as well. So I go left 8, I go down 4. I go left 1, I go down 2. 0, 0, right 1 up 2. Right 8 up 4. So just like I thought, the graph's going to make an S shape. Alright, it has 2 arrows, so make sure you have your 2 arrows on there. Don't have just 1 arrow. And because of that, because it's a cube root, so as soon as I see the cube root, I know the domain is all the reals. I know the range is all the reals because it goes left forever, it goes right forever, it goes up and down forever. Alright, and that's it. Alright, number 5, we have y is equal to negative 1/7 cube root of x. So once again, I'm going to find h and k. There's nobody in jail, so h is 0. There's nobody after the jail, so k is 0. Once again, it might be helpful for you to find a is negative 1/7. Because it's a cube root, it's a middle point. So that tells me right there, it's a middle. So I have x and y, 0, 0 in the middle. I have minus 1, minus 8, plus 1, plus 8. Now, I can use a to fill in the rest, so I have negative 1/7, negative 2/7. I subtract, so when I subtract the negative, I'm actually adding. So I have 1/7 and positive 2/7. Now, my little trick here was, I noticed that all these are sevenths, so I'm just going to make my graph go by sevenths. 3 sevenths, 4 sevenths, 5 sevenths, 6 sevenths. There's 7 sevenths. That's 1. So I go negative 1 seventh, negative 2 sevenths, 3 sevenths, 4 sevenths, 5 sevenths, 6 sevenths. There's negative 1. So it's just going to make this really easy to graph, and I don't have to put it in decimal form, which sevenths are nasty decimals, so I don't have to do that. So I got 0, 0. I go left 1, up 1 seventh. I go left 8, up 2 sevenths. I go right 1, down a seventh. Right 8, down 2 sevenths. And notice this is a little S shape. It's flipped because of the negative out front. Once again, because it's a cube root, I don't have to do any thinking. I automatically know it's all the reals and all the reals. If you're not sure why, it goes left forever, right forever, up forever, down forever. Any number you could possibly ever think of will be on this chart somewhere. And that's it for number 5. Alright, number 6 is 7/9 cube root of x. Once again, everything's exactly the same. I find 0, 0. A is 7/9. I just find that just so I don't mess up. It's a middle point, so I put 0, 0 in the middle. I have negative 1, negative 8, plus 1, plus 8. Alright. Now, I'm going to use my little trick. I say 7/9, and then I have 14/9. I go backwards, so I subtract. I have minus 7/9, minus 14/9. Now, most of you guys are going to want decimals for this, because these are kind of messy to graph, and there's not really a good way to do it. So I'm going to make this negative 7/9 is the same thing as negative 0.7 repeating. Negative 14/9 is the same as negative 1.5 repeating. So that's equal to 0.7 positive repeating, and that's equal to 1.5 repeating. All right. So if you don't need the repeating. If you just want to estimate it, that's fine as well. So once again, I'm going to go by quarters. So that's a quarter, that's a half, that's 3/4, that's 1. Quarter, 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 that's 2. Quarter, 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 that's negative 1. There's a quarter, there's a quarter, there's a quarter, that's negative 2. Okay. Now remember, that's 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, so forth and so forth. So negative 8, I go left 8, I go down. Negative 1.5 is right there, so negative 1.55, just a little bit lower than that. Alright, so I go negative 0.7, so I go left 1, I go down to negative 0.7, so there's 0.5, 0.75, it's 7.7, so it's about right there. 0, 0, I go right 1 up to 0.77, I go right 8 up to 1.55, and there is my S shape. It's still an S shape. Mine's a little bit wider because I'd fit it. Yours might be a lot more, might be a lot tighter on there because you didn't use the same scale I use. Right? That's it. Domain and range, all the real numbers because that's what it is, and that's it for up to 6. All right, number 7. Remember that is just a fancy, that little 1/2 exponent is just a fancy way to write a square root. So you can rewrite this as y is equal to the square root of x plus 1 inside the jail, because that's inside the parentheses, plus 8 outside the jail, because that's what's outside the parentheses. So I still find h and k to start. So I have h to be, looks like positive 1. Remember, we don't trust our x. If I put negative 1 and positive 8 is k, I trust the k. That's why it's that. You might want to find a. Remember, there's nothing outside of there, so technically there's a 1 there, so that's my a. It's a starting point because it's a square root. So I say x, y chart, negative 1, positive 8. Now I do h plus 1. H plus 1, so I do negative 1 plus 1 is 0. Then I do h plus 4, so I go back to negative 1. Negative 1 plus 4 is 3. Then I do h plus 9. Negative 1 plus 9 is 8. Now, I can plug it in if I want, totally plug it in, but I'm going to use the a trick. I'm going to use a. So I'm going to do plus a to get my next level. 8 plus 1 is 9. Then I add a to get my next level. 9 plus 1 is 10. Then I add a again to get my next level. Alright, so I have negative 1, 8, 9, 0, 9, 10, 3, 10, and then 8, 11. I'm going to go by 2's on the y, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, etc. and it goes down. So my y's are going by 2. So I have negative 1, positive 8. I have 0, positive 9. I have 3, 1, 2, 3. My x's did not change. 10. And then I have 8, positive 11. So domain is all the reals such that now I'm going to use h. So h is going to the right, so I say x is greater than negative 1. Also, if you see that x is positive, that's another way to say that it's greater than. Range, all the reals, such that y is greater than, there's k, so I put 8 there. Right? Another way to know that it's greater than is because a is positive. So a is positive. That's another reason that that's a positive, that's greater than or equal to there. And that's it for 7. Alright, number 8, we have y is equal to 3/4 x to the 1/3 minus 1. So right away you're going to want to rewrite it. Remember that 1/3 is a fancy way to say cube root. It's a fancy way to say cube root. So I rewrite this as y equals 3/4 is outside because it's not in parentheses. So it's 3/4 times the cube root of x minus 1. So that means when I do my h and k, there's no h because there's nobody in the jail with x, so h is 0, k is negative 1, and you might want to find a to be 3/4. Now once again, because it's a cube root, it's a middle point. It's a middle point. So I make my xy chart. I put 0, negative 1. Now I got negative 1, negative 8 for my x's. Positive 1, positive 8, because I did h minus 1, h minus 8, h plus 1, h plus 8. Now, I'm going to use my a trick to get the rest of them. So negative 1 plus 3/4 is 1/4. 1/4 is negative 1/4, sorry. Negative 1/4 plus 3/4 is positive 1/2. Now when I go backwards, I get negative 1 and 3/4. And then I get negative 1 and negative 2.5. That's just using the a trick. All right. Domain and range, before I even graph it, I don't even need the graph. I know because it's a cube root, domain is all the reals, range is all the reals. So now I'm just going to graph this. I'm going to change and go by halves. So I have 1/2, 1. Another half, 2. Another half, 3. So I got negative 1/2, negative 1. Negative 1.5, negative 2, and so forth. So I go over 8, I go up to 1/2, I go over 1, I go down to 1/4, so it's right there, halfway between 0 and 1/2, 0, negative 1, I go left 1, I go down to negative 3/4, so it's right there, in between negative 1.5 and negative 2, and I go left 8, I go down negative 2.5, which would be right there, because I got negative 3. So there's my graph. It looks like the shape I wanted to. 2 arrows, domain and range is already done, and I've built the graph. Alrighty. Number 9, everything's exactly the same. Remember, h is in the number inside your jail. We don't trust them, so I changed that negative 4 to positive 4. A lot of people are forgetting that. There's nobody outside of there, so k is 0. And you might want to find a to be 2. That's another, if you get in the habit of finding a, there's a good chance that there's a better chance you won't mess up h and k. Now, it's a starting point because it's a square root. So make my xy chart. I put 4, 0 to start. Now, to get my next points, I say h plus 1, that's 5. H plus 4, that's 8. H plus 9 is 13. Now, I'm going to use my a, I'm going to do 0 plus a to get 2. It's going to be my next one. Then I'm going to add a to get my next one. So 2 plus 2 is 4. Then I'm going to add a again to get 6. So I go 4, 0. If you don't change your scale, which I didn't change my scale on this one, I go over 5 up 2, over 8 up 4, and then I just know that the other one's going to be way up there. Domain, all the reals, such that x is greater than or equal to, what is h? H is 4. Range, all the reals, such that y is greater than or equal to k, that's 0. Remember, it's greater than because it's going to the right, or because that x is positive. It's greater than for y because it's going up, or because 2 is positive. All right? Since both those are positive, that's why those are greater than. And that's it for number 9. All right, 10, we have y is equal to negative cube root of x plus 2 minus 3. Remember h, we see plus 2. We don't trust them because they're hanging out with our x, so it's negative 2. K is negative 3. A, it might be helpful to find A. Even though there's no number out there, I see negative, it tells me it's negative 1. Remember, it's middle point because it's a cube root. So I make my xy chart. I put negative 2, negative 3 in the middle. Remember, I do h minus 1, that's why I have negative 3. I do h minus 8, negative 2 minus 8 is negative 10. I do h plus 1. That's why I get negative 1. H plus 8. That's why I get positive 6. Now, I'm going to use my A trick. So I do negative 3 plus negative plus A. So negative 3 plus negative 1 gives me negative 4. Negative 4 plus A gives me negative 5. Now when I go up, it gets bigger, so I get negative 2, negative 1. So I go left 10, I go down to negative 1. So left 10 down to negative 1. I go negative 3 down to negative 2. I go negative 2, negative 3. I go negative 1, negative 4. And I go 6 down to 5. So it's pretty close there. Remember, domain and range is really easy with cube roots. It's automatically all the real numbers. Doesn't matter what h and k is. And that's it for number 10. Alright, number 11, we have y is equal to the 3 times the cube root of x minus 2 minus 4. So we have h, remember, it's negative, looks like negative 2. We don't trust the person hanging on their x, that's why it's positive 2. Negative 4. And then a is 3, because that's the number right there. Okay? So now, I know it's a middle point, because it's a cube root. So I say xy chart, I put positive 2, positive 4 in the middle. I do h plus 1, that's how I get 3. I do h plus 8, that's how I get 10. Now I'm going to do the same thing to get the bottom, but this time we're going to, I don't like how I did that. I'm going to redo it. I like to, personally, I just like to have the adding part on the bottom. I like to put 3 and 10 here. And then I would like to put the subtracting part above it. So I did minus 1, which I have plus 1. 2 minus 8 is negative 6. Now, you could plug it in. So remember, guys, I'm using this A trick because I just don't feel like plugging it in a calculator. But you can always plug it in the calculator to check your work. So I do 4 plus A. That gives me the one below it. So that's why I have 7. 7 plus 3 is 10. Now I have 4 minus A. So if I do minus A, it gives me the one above it. 4 minus 3 is 1. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. So I go left 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down to 2. I got positive 1, positive 1. I have 2, 1, 2, up to 4. I have 3, up to 7. And then we have 10, 10, right around there. Or it makes a nice little S. If yours doesn't make an S, then you're making a mistake there. Once again, I have domain and range is really easy because it's a cube root. I don't do any thinking. So because it's a cube root, it's always that. There's nothing that's ever going to change from there. And that's it for 11. Alright, 12. We have y is equal to the negative 3 times the square root of x minus 3 minus 2. Once I get to h and k, looks like it's negative 3, but remember, we don't trust that h. That's why it's a positive 3. And then we have negative 2. K is right there. Or a, that's negative 3. I always like to find a just so you don't get confused. X and y. It's a starting point because it's a square root. So I have positive 3, negative 2 to start. I do h plus 1, that's how I get 4. I do h plus 4, that's how I get 7. I do h plus 9, that's how I get 12. Remember, if you don't follow my rules for the left side, you can't use this A trick, and you have to plug it in your calculator. But negative 2 plus a is negative 5. Negative 5 plus negative 3 is negative 8. Negative 8 plus negative 3 is negative 11. So I go 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, down to negative 2. I go over 4, down to negative 5. I go over 7, down to negative 8. messed up on the last point. Should go here, and there's negative 8. There we go. Domain. Now we're back to a square root, so h matters. All right, domain is all the reals such that x is greater than or equal to h is 3. Now, because that's positive, that's a reason it's greater than or equal to. Range, all the reals. I can see it's going down, so I know it's less than or equal to. But another way to know that's because it's negative. That's why I have y is less than or equal to. And this time it's going to be k, which is negative 2. And that's it for 12. All right, 13. I see it's a square root, so I find h and k first. So even though I'm going to find domain, so I need to find the domain and range without graphing, you need h and k, and you need to know whether it's a starting or whether it's a square root or cube root. That's it. So I find h and k. There's h. There is no k, so I have 12, 0, because remember we don't trust the negative 12. They're hanging out with our x. So because it's a square root, I say domain is all the reals such that x, because that's positive, I put greater than or equal to. And then whatever h is, 12. Range, all the reals such that y, because that's positive, I put y is greater than or equal to. So I have greater than or equal to whatever k is 0. There we go. That's it for 13. 14, I have y is equal to 1/2 cube root of x minus 4. Really, you don't even need h and k for this one, but h is 0, k is negative 4. Because it's a cube root, I don't have to do any thinking. All the reals. Done. That's it for 14. It's that simple. 15, we have y is equal to the square root of x minus 3 plus 6. Once again, I find h and k. There's my h. There's my k. I don't trust my h, so it's positive 3, 6. So it's positive 3, 6. Since it's a square root, I'm going to say domain is all the reals such that x, and because that's positive, I put x is greater than. So I put greater than or equal to whatever h is. This time it's 3. Range, all the reals such that y, because that's positive right there, I put y is greater than. So it's greater than or equal to. This time it's k, which is 6. And that's it. That's how you do that without using any graphs or any XY charts or anything. You don't need any of that. And that's it for 15. So that finishes the review worksheet 3.5, 3.6, part 1. I went 1 through 15. I do not believe there's any mistakes. So if there is a mistake, it's not on purpose, but there still might be one, so that doesn't change anything. So no mistakes on purpose. That doesn't promise anything, so if I find one later, I'll let you know. Any questions, let me know.